This is the lecture for European history for Wednesday, the 15th of September, 2021. And it has been a busy day for me. Hopefully you guys have had a good but productive day. We begin. The bloom is off the rose. We start with the last aspect of high medieval culture that lasts with us to this day. The university. The university. The place that I hate sending you to after you leave here. Because I know what most universities have devolved into. In their origins, universities began as cathedral schools. The cathedral attracted talented people, both within and beyond the church, to be a part of the cathedral project, or to service those who were. And the church, being wise, decided to employ some of these talented people as teachers in cathedral schools. And these were teachers in a time when, again, most people, especially in the upper classes, are functionally illiterate. They can't read, they can't write, they are innumerate, they can't count or do basic math. The very small group of noblemen and the larger group of churchmen and the increasing large group of craftsmen and merchants who are learning to read and write have an opportunity not merely to learn basics of education. Make sure, yeah, good, you've got your notes out. But also to learn advanced math, like the math that goes into the architecture of a Gothic cathedral. Chemistry, or alchemy as it was known then, to go into the mixtures of lead and metals that make up the stained glass and the lead that holds the stained glass in place. So the best and brightest minds were, for example, drawn to Paris, to Notre Dame du Paris Cathedral School, which is a cathedral in Paris, Our Lady of Paris, Notre Dame du Paris. And as time went on, the expert teachers who were hired to staff these schools, who were really at the top of their field, presumably, or they wouldn't be there, begin to develop customs. And these customs of teaching involve some rabbinical wisdom. The rabbis from very long before Christ had determined a form of logic and argumentation rooted in precedent and evidence. A rabbi will never argue a point of view about faith or scripture from their own reasoning. They will always find precedent. They will find essays written by previous rabbis who interpret scripture in a manner harmonious to them. And so what rabbinical wisdom does is it has the advocate build a case based on research. Sound familiar? From valid sources. Now, our legal profession, which is reborn in these cathedral schools, employs this rabbinical wisdom, whereby you don't simply say, my client's innocent, it's self-evident, but whereby you employ evidence, logic, rationalism. These new disciplines, please have your notes up. These new disciplines that are developing in the cathedral schools and later in the schools that move away from the cathedral, like a second amoeba dividing from the first, become rooted in what is called scholasticism or scholarship, which is a rigorous loyalty to logic, to reason, to research, to evidence, and to standards of conduct and communication befitting someone who is a part of this elite community. Universities form from cathedral schools. And professors develop this scholastic sense of how things should be within the academy. They have robes of office. They have necklaces which indicate their achievements, their academic qualifications. And this still goes on. At my alma mater, Bates College, at graduation, the professors parade before the graduates in their regalia. Some of them have multiple PhDs. All of them have robes from their master's programs or their PhD programs. And it's like a soldier wearing medals. But it's academic. It's scholastic. Universities, when they separated from the cathedrals, when they separated from that close association with the church that most Catholic and Protestant universities have at the beginning before they go secular. The majority of non-state institutions in the United States, for example, started out as a result of some religious organization. Bates College, my college, was started by Methodists who wanted a seminary for their ministers. And that seminary developed into a liberal arts college. They were one of only 2 neighborhoods in a city that was walled off. Not from the outside, that was done for the whole city, but from the rest of the city. The university was walled off. You could not go in or out except through a set of controlled gates. Does anyone recall what other neighborhood within a city is walled off from the rest of the city in an old-style European city? Mr. Lambert.
The ghettos, I think.
And who lives in the ghettos?
The poor people and farmers, right?
No, not the poor people and farmers, but good guess. You are right, absolutely right about the ghettos, Ms. Fish.
The Jews live in the ghettos.
The Jews live in the ghettos. Now, the Jews live in the ghettos because they are part of the diaspora. There is no Jewish homeland. From 134 AD through 1947-48, there is no Jewish homeland. So the Jews of the diaspora live as strangers in a strange land, live as inogorodim, people from other towns. They live as foreigners in other people's lands. But they maintain their Jewishness. They do not fully assimilate. They wear different clothing. They keep to themselves. They are the only people in the Middle Ages allowed to loan money at interest. No one else, because it's a mortal sin called usury, according to the Christian faith, for the Catholic Church. Jews end up being important members of the middle class. They are tradesmen, they are skilled, and they are the moneylenders of most medieval towns. So they serve a very important purpose. Jews of these types can enrich a community. But they dress differently. They keep to themselves. They don't allow their daughters to marry Gentile sons easily because the Jewish identity is passed through the mother's line. And they do not want to lose their grandchildren to whatever Gentile community they're among, whether it's Christian or Islamic. The Jews, by keeping kosher, even eat different foods with different spices. Now, you and I live in a very prissy time. Prissy clean, because we can bathe and shower daily or at least frequently. We have wonderful soap, hot water, shampoos, and all sorts of things to keep us from being the normal stinky creatures that human beings are in a natural state. But in medieval cities, people did not bathe the way we do. In fact, 100 years ago in cities in Europe and the United States, people would take sponge baths every day or two, and they would only have a real bath maybe once or twice a week if they were lucky. Sometimes they didn't have that option, so it was sponge baths all around forever. So people carried with them an odeur. Pheromones and body odor are shaped by the spices and the foods that you eat. Jews smelled differently because the kosher foods that they restricted themselves to were different enough from the local diet to give their body chemistry a slightly different flavor. To be an individual is to be indecent. That's an axiom. People on a gut level don't like somebody who's that different in their midst. They certainly don't like a group of people who are so different within their midst, who keep to themselves, which could offend your sense of what, I'm not good enough for you, my son's not good enough for your daughter. Moreover, their successes. Because of the Jewish tendency to stress the benefits of education over the typical tendency of Gentiles to, Jews tend to rise higher, they tend to accrue more wealth, and they are the people to whom you go for money. All of these things provoke anti-Semitic resentment. I am not blaming the Jews. I am explaining human nature and how it applies to 1,500 years or more of anti-Semitism in European societies against the Jews. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the Jews live among us, but as a people apart. So as a result of this gut-level, visceral dislike or distrust of the Jews within our city, the Jews within our city are placed in a walled-off ghetto. They are not allowed after dark out of their ghetto. If the wealthiest man in town is caught outside the ghetto after dark without a pass signed by the authorities, he can have the stuffing beaten out of him, and it often happened. And he'd have to take it because he had violated the law by being outside of the ghetto. The ghetto walls were not designed to keep people out of the ghetto who weren't Jews. They were designed to keep the Jews in when the good folk were sleeping. So there's a brief explanation as to why the Jews had walls around their ghetto neighborhood. Does somebody want to opine as to why a university, which was not composed of Jews, would have a wall around it? Ms. Velasco?
Wasn't it so that people, because the university was supposed to be a place where you could speak, so that, to avoid anybody getting...
Yeah. In a university, a scholar must, to be intellectually honest, question things that in the wider society should never be questioned. You must think and express obscene, taboo thoughts if you are going to fully explore any idea intellectually. So, within a university classroom, a history classroom, a theology classroom, it is acceptable and was acceptable to question the basis for the Pope's legitimacy, the basis for the nobility's legitimate authority, to question the customs and laws that they had grown up with, to look at the core beliefs of their own society and wonder aloud with others, is this reasonable, or is this simply the dead hand of tradition? In universities, people would have discussions, raise ideas, and ask questions that would get them burned at the stake outside. But not just discussions. Vesalius and other experimenters in biology during the Middle Ages would do experiments on human biology by exhuming the recently buried corpses of the dead. Medical schools still do this. You can sell your body or donate your body to science so that when you die, medical students can slice you up and study your organs so that future doctors can get hands-wet experience inside a human body. Some of the skeletons that you see in classrooms are real. From a medical point of view, this makes logical sense. But It's ghoulish, and it violates canon law, the law of the church. And, golly whiz, that's Uncle Ed! You're exhuming Uncle Ed! That's not a corpse. That's the guy that taught me how to, make castles in the sand. So, universities, medical departments, such as they were in the Middle Ages, would routinely have their professors and students sneak out of the walls, go to the graveyard, exhume the dead, cover things over so it looks like no one was there, which isn't always easy, because fresh earth looks like fresh earth, and bring the body back so that they could then autopsy it, cut it open, and see how things worked inside. The history of peasant uprisings, the history of the Albigensian Crusade, which I just told you about, indicate how dangerous it is for everyday people to begin questioning what they have received through tradition as truth. Not everyone is an intellectual. Not everyone is capable of taking an idea out and playing with it without having it shatter their credulity, their belief. If intellectuals do what they do in the presence of everyday working folk, those everyday working folk might take a person questioning the hierarchical structure of the church and of society in a theoretical manner and determine that eat the rich, eat them, take their stuff, destroy them, make it as if they never were, and soon there'll be no more rich people and everyone will be better off. Now, that is not a reasonable conclusion to draw from a theoretical discussion about hierarchy. But if you're not used to ideas and playing with them, if you treat ideas with a superstitious reverence and awe, if an authoritative person calls into question that which you have learned, that which has been passed down to you, maybe it's something worth fighting over. Maybe you want to take up arms about it. And maybe southern France or the Czech regions end up burning for years because of peasants' uprising in the name of the misinterpreted intellectual curiosity of a scholar. Ellie? Dangerous ideas exist within the university. They need to be quarantined. They need to be sealed off, away from the broader society, because that broader society does not have the training in theoretical discussion necessary to have a discussion about theory that does not then lead to violence. Do you follow me so far? If you don't understand what I've just said, you better ask, because what I'm about to say is predicated upon your understanding. Okay. So universities are sealed off because dangerous ideas lurk within. It's okay to talk about things in the university. It is not okay to talk about those same things in the city. Later on, you will learn the stories of Martin Luther and Galileo Galilei. And both Luther and Galileo were told by the Roman Catholic Church, whose job it was to maintain social order, at a time of great social, economic, military, cultural change. The church is trying desperately to maintain social order. And Luther calls into question the role of the hierarchical church and the Pope, and Galileo calls into question the centrality of Earth in the universe. In both cases, the church go to these men and say, don't talk about this in public. If you want, write about it in Latin and distribute it to a limited list of scholars and educated people, and we will have the discussion. But Martin Luther, your insistence on nailing your 95 Theses to the walls of to the doors of a cathedral so that everyone can read it or have it read to them. Galileo, your insistence on writing a discourse on the universal systems and of casting people who believe that the earth is at the center of the universe as the character simplicio, which means stupid. These are things that could cause more violence. Write to scholars. Write in Latin. Write to and within the culture of the university and the upper hierarchy of the church, and you will be fine. And both of those men said no. Luther's musings caused 150 years of religious war in Europe. And arguably, including the end of World War II, although that's debatable, the bloodiest war in German history, and that's saying something because we're talking Germany here. The 30 Years' War. Galileo's ideas also create problems. And ultimately create this silly pantomime that one has to either believe in science or religion, that there is an inherent opposition between the two. That's not necessarily the case. Read some Blaise Pascal, you'll get an idea about that. In any event, universities were the one place in medieval society where people could ask impertinent, obscene questions as a matter of intellectual thoroughness and honesty. Now we get to today. I am ashamed of my colleagues in the university. I am ashamed at their self-indulgent moral cowardice. I hate the fact that most of you are going to liberal arts institutions where they have free speech zones. Free speech zones. In the American Republic, which is a free speech zone. In the university campus, which is supposedly and traditionally the freest speech zone in the entire society. But within the time between when I was a college student in the mid-1980s and today, how can I put this diplomatically? Commie bastards have taken over the schools, the curriculum. Okay, illegitimate sons of Karl Marx. How's that? People are bullied because their ideas do not match the prevailing wisdom of the left. People are failed because they refuse to adapt their writing to the prevailing wisdom of the left. College departments have been purged of anyone who questions the assumptions of the radical left. American universities have precious few moderates, let alone conservatives. Furthermore, I will call on history departments. The study of history is being abandoned by some very high-status places so that they can increase their women's studies and minority studies departments. Because after all, who needs history? It's just the story of dead European white men and their oppression. This is not education. This is indoctrination. What many of you face if you go to a college with a humanities program that is typical is a place that can only be described as an intellectual gulag. A concentration camp where you are taught what to think, not how to think, which is what the university is for, but what to think. Before you go, you owe it to yourself to decide, A, do I need this? Do I need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a degree to do what I want to do? Not everyone needs college. Item 2, If I'm going to go in, am I going to be a chameleon and appear to be whatever the professors, the administrations, and the dominant student groups want me to be? Am I going to speak falsehood for the sake of getting along? Because none of it matters except getting the mediocrity paper that is the degree? Or am I going to stand up for what I believe in, come what may? In which case you will have, like my niece had, crowds of students after a discussion in a history class with the professor smiling, nodding, and looking on because she expressed a libertarian, not even a conservative, a libertarian point of view in a class, in a history classroom, in a discussion. Shouting, "We hope you burn. We hope you burn. We hope you burn." In colleges, the notion that speech must not be offensive is de rigueur, has been accepted as true. To which I say, bleep that! If you're speaking the truth of your heart, if you go into sufficient detail about it, if you're being truly honest, you can't help but offend someone else's sensibilities. Because we don't all see the world the same way. The university, more than anywhere else, should be a place where that is done. When I went to college, I wanted to listen to communists. I wanted to listen to feminists. And I did. And a bunch of other out there groups. Because I was curious to know how a smart, good person could come to the conclusions that I, in my heart and mind and soul, know are evil, evil, evil. And I did. I was and still remain intellectually curious. If you happen to express ideas that are communistic because you believe in them, I'm not going to punish you. We'll disagree, but we'll have a conversation. Yeah, you're going to have to listen to me go off, but I'll listen to you as well. I will make time. I really will. Because that's what education is supposed to be. But that is not what education is anymore on American college campuses. And I suspect this is true across the Western world. We have an environment that is supposed to be the most open of all, locked down like Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution China, where if you say something that is off program, you will suffer. You may be unpersoned, you may be disappeared, you may be excised from the community. Or worst of all, you may be bullied into being brainwashed. It could happen. It could very easily happen. In The Kingdom of the Blind, Rudyard Kipling wrote, "The one-eyed man is king," but he's wrong. In The Kingdom of the Blind, the one-eyed man is beaten and killed as a heretic because he asserts that there is this thing called sight against the wisdom of everyone else in this kingdom of the blind. It is very hard to maintain your cultural values and to maintain a genuine intellectual curiosity in a totalitarian police state environment. And that, unfortunately, is what so many American colleges have become. Is it a happy story? No. You all certainly have the capacity to succeed at college. Yeah. But college is not what it used to be, and it's not what it should be. And I consider what's happened to colleges a betrayal of my vocation. I'm here because, in my own way, I think God wants me to do this. And I'm committed to do the best job I can to the fallible best of my ability. And that means encouraging you to think for yourself and to speak about your ideas and to be brave about what your convictions are. Who cares whether they happen to agree with mine or not? So we talk, and I hope you will join me. And the whole point of having to speak in here is to develop the habit of the courage of your convictions, the courage of your convictions. Because you're safe to speak in here. You won't be safe to speak in some classrooms in your future. This should matter to you. Questions, comments, thoughts, insights, rebuttals? Jackson.
My father went to UC Davis. To say that his values there were not the majority's opinion would be an understatement. And since, as a son, I have a lot of those similar opinions.
Well, your dad just brainwashed you. College will cleanse you of that.
Definitely. And I guess my only question for you is how would you go through college with more of a conservative mindset?
I can only tell you what I did. I went to college a poor scholar. I'm still not a great scholar. I'm not a very disciplined fellow when it comes to the rabbinical reasoning that I've just told you about. It's not my strong point. But I got into college because I'm pretty smart and I'm pretty glib. And academics there would have been enough to take my full attention. But I didn't give academics my full attention. Because on a basic level, I was offended when professors tried silencing people like me and punishing people like me because I disagreed with their personal opinions. I got into it so much that I ended up spending most of my time there fighting them. I left college for a semester to rethink things. I decided to go back, and then in the second semester of my senior year, I failed out because I was a lousy scholar. And because I was so engaged in a battle, bless you, with the system. Now, that failure made me. It was a good experience in the long run, though it was incredibly painful, and it took years and years to recover from it. I had to rebuild my life. One of the things about me that I can't or won't change, but I tried once, it just didn't work, is I have to reveal my thoughts on things. But I don't expect others to agree. I just have to speak. Because that's one of the things that came out of my experience. My experience is not the experience of a wise or prudent man. I'm many things, I'm not prudent, and my wisdom is questionable. Passionate, not necessarily wise. Your dad probably has good advice for you. What my wife's dad told her was don't expect truth in the classroom. Give the professors what they want. Get the good grades because your purpose in college is to get a good degree with a good GPA so you can get a good job afterwards. I had a bad influence on her. She, at the end, wasn't willing to do that, but that was practical advice. I can't give that advice because I don't believe in it. Basically, Jackson, I don't have any kind of answer other than how you face life. You can wear the chameleon colors and avoid trouble, and sometimes that's smart. If you want to see a survivor, read a book called I, Claudius, about the Roman Emperor Claudius, who survived through all sorts of purges by seeming to be an idiot and by never challenging anyone. And there's a series of British TV shows called I, Claudius, which is wonderful. He was a survivor. I would have been killed in the first or second purge. So there's what I know. It's not particularly wise. I do know this. Better for you to make a decision before you go there about how you're going to face it than to allow yourself to be bullied and changed against your will. I really don't advise that for anyone and under any circumstances. Unless you are, to quote Martin Luther, unless I am persuaded by reason and scripture, to go against conscience is neither right nor safe. Here I stand, I can do no other. I think ultimately you deserve to live on the basis of your conscience. Jane.
If the mindset right now is more towards, I guess, the progressive side of things at universities, but it was once more the conservative side of university.
Well, it was more of an open environment. I don't think that universities, being what they are, ever were. Well, anyway, since the 20th century in the United States, we're conservative.
Right, but the ancient world used to have a more conservative view.
Yes, it did.
And over the years, it has kind of shifted more to the progressive side. But what I find kind of to be ironic is people with progressive mindset, and I'm not saying that this is everyone, but they complained about being the minority and about how they were being disrespected. But now, if you have a conservative mindset, you are also more likely now to be disrespected, which is ironic considering the fact that we at university it's supposed to be open-minded, but yet it's not.
I once learned from liberals that the highest form of patriotism is dissent, is being willing to speak truth to power. And they pointed out the failings of Senator Joe McCarthy in the early 1950s in the witch hunts against communists in government in Hollywood and so forth. Senator McCarthy's era lasted 5 or 6 years, and it affected a few hundred people in government and in the entertainment industry. The cancel culture has been at work for at least 20 or 30 years and has affected countless, I think tens of thousands of people. And not just the people that they punish, but the people that they intimidate into silence so that they never speak their mind in the first place. The first president of Free Czechoslovakia, a playwright named Václav Havel, said that the worst thing the communists ever did to me was make me censor myself. He would never say anything without thinking about it, and he often would decide not to say something because he had been tortured in a communist gulag, brainwashed even. It's ironic that the hard left in this country, which in the 1960s started the free speech movement at Berkeley, considers free speech to be its greatest enemy today. Yeah, it is. I genuinely believe most people, progressives and conservatives, are good people, well-intentioned and smart. I just wish more progressives would look into the history of their own movement to see the irony of things. It's like today. For decades, I've heard from pro-abortion, pro-choice people, my body, my choice. But the same people that chanted my body, my choice for a woman's right to choose to have an abortion are saying you don't have an option not to get vaccinated. That, to me, is ironic.
It's also critical because they were extremely upset whenever they were discriminated. Now that conservatives are just discriminated, I've been yelled at for my beliefs, talking with my own family members, but I don't...
Who supposedly love you.
well,
yeah.
But I don't complain about it. I'm just like, okay, fine, that's your opinion. But whenever I said something about their beliefs, they immediately complained.
There is a visceral personalness to many people in the way they view things who are on the left. There are some people on the right who are that way too, and they're not fun to talk to either. But there's a degree of personal umbrage that many leftists take when you express a different point of view. As in, how dare you? Sorry, to quote Greta Thunberg, how dare you? How dare you? Yes.
So I consider myself to be progressive and Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree that universities, it should be about expressing yourself. And my mom always tells me that university is the time when you find yourself, and it should be a safe space for that. And I agree that no one's belief should be put down for that. But I also believe that there is a right and wrong time to bring up your beliefs in situations. Like in a classroom setting, I just feel like it's important to stand up for what you believe in, but there are times when you can kind of step back from that and just, because, I don't know, I just think it's more of estimating when it's the right time to say something and when it's not.
I have no problem at all. In fact, I celebrate anyone with the wisdom to know when to speak and when not to speak. That's a good skill to have. That's a life skill. I don't have it very well. And it should be obvious. It's one of my weaknesses. But you making that decision for yourself is wonderful. Someone else pressuring you into that decision for their convenience is not. That's the big difference I have with what you said. Otherwise, obviously, I agree. Not that my agreement means much. It's just, I have no problem with a person, even if I think they should speak, deciding to remain silent, as long as it's their call. But the notion that we can't have that conversation right now because a certain type of person is in the room, that bugs me. Because if you're exploring ideas, often you'll go into dangerous territory as part of the exploration. Again, I think being offended is part of being thoughtful. Anyway, I'm babbling. Do you have more to say, or do you want
Um, that's all, yeah.
Okay. Other thoughts? Alex, and then Haley.
Everybody has a different time of when they think they should say something, so it's impossible to please everybody in the room at the same time. It's just impossible.
Yeah. Well, look, I expect that there are days when things come out of my mouth that would take 80% of you, that would, on some level, tweak 80% of you or so, and that if we were in a truly open environment, 80% of you would go, "No, you're wrong." Strange, man. And we don't do that all the time because of the mission of this room, which is to get you to think about your beliefs in a historical fashion. And I need to teach the history to be able to do that. I get what you're saying. Am I missing something? Because I could very well be missing something with what you said.
No.
Okay. Haley,
All right, here we go. So,
notice how she feels the need to preface your next.
yeah, I have to practice it. You just have to. Okay, so there's this guy. His name is Mark Dice. Mark Dice is pretty cool. We like Mark Dice. So he goes out
You do.
and he's cool. He goes out and he decides to play progressive for a minute. And he goes out and he goes, okay, who would like to sign this petition to get anybody who doesn't want to get vaccinated? Of course, she sent me this video. It's anybody who doesn't want to get vaccinated put in prison.
So this guy's a YouTuber who goes on college campuses and asks provocative questions.
Just on the street.
Okay.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so he goes and he asks, and there's these people who are like, oh, how dare they not? How, that is so, and this guy's not wearing a mask. So, and this older lady, she had like 2 different masks on, and she goes, how dare, they just need to get over themselves, stiff neck people, all this stuff. I was like, oh my gosh. So there's that. Anyway, next one. In regards to
Try to limit it to about a minute more. No.
In regards,
Really. Go.
in regards to what Ruby said about a right place and a right time to like speak stuff, whatever. So for me, if somebody says something that goes against my morals or my values, I'm gonna say something about it. That's just how it goes. So
That's
like,
your choice.
exactly, and so I feel like that I shouldn't be. I'm not saying you feel it this way either, but I feel like that I shouldn't be punished for saying.
There is natural social consequences. For example, if you behave in a way that's considered obnoxious, people will treat you like an obnoxious person. There's a difference between speaking the truth of your soul and just being a jerk.
Yeah.
And it's an important thing to try to speak the truth of your soul without being a jerk. Go on.
So
Not that I'm saying you're a jerk. I don't think you
I
are.
know. But like if somebody, like if a professor hypothetically was like, God is dead, God's not real.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna stand up and say, well, actually, no, because that is something that like Jesus would put on my heart, something that I have to speak up about.
Fine. Now, I could see a philosophy professor saying Gott ist tot because that is from Friedrich Nietzsche, a 19th century German philosopher. I could also see the professor starting a conversation with a provocative thing. I do things like that, expecting discussion. But to have a professor say Gott ist tot, God is dead, and demand that you comply with that, that's oppressive.
That's the movie God's Not Dead.
And there are times when people have tried to pull stuff like that. Yes?
So I'm just saying, like, you know how you were all saying, oh, the people that are like, my body, my choice with abortion, but then not with masks. Well, it's like, we're kind of doing the same thing, because it's your body, but it's not your choice to kill like, I don't agree with abortion,
Mhm.
but we're being hypocrites, because we don't want to wear masks and stuff, because they think clearly that it protects them. You know, and then we're saying, but don't, like, it's like, don't have abortions. We're basically telling them what to do with their bodies, you know?
Mhm.
So
It's very hard to be on one side of an issue. I believe in the death penalty for certain types of criminals. Murderers, rapists, kidnappers, child molesters. I believe in mandatory death penalty on a second offense Because you can imagine a person being wrongfully accused and convicted, but to have that happen multiple times, that's harder. But I'm a bloodthirsty fellow. I also believe in war when it's necessary, when I think it's necessary. I respect those people, and I'm going to say Roman Catholics in particular, because there's a certain strain within Roman Catholicism that is against all forms of killing, human by human. So these Catholic friends of mine argue against the death penalty. They believe that you put somebody in prison forever if they're truly that dangerous, but you don't take their life. That you try everything, including negotiating with truly evil people, short of going to war with them, because killing is such a grave offense against the laws of God and man. I don't agree with them, but I absolutely respect their consistency. I can respect the consistency of a pro-choice person, even though I'm not pro-choice. And I'm not saying you are, I'm just referencing your question. Who says, my body, my choice, it's my decision about an abortion, and it's my decision whether I wear a mask or get vaccinated. Because there's consistency there. I appreciate the consistency. But there are a lot of people, and I'm guilty of this too, that tend to pick our cause based on the convenience of our side. And that is, at best, inconsistent, at worst, hypocritical. And it's something that we should be very careful about doing. It's something that we should not do casually, and a lot of people do. Sam?
Okay, so I have a few things that I want to say, but the interesting thing that I tend to notice is that people in power, whether they're left or right, tend to accuse other general body of people of doing the exact thing that they do themselves. It's incredible just how consistent that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, these professors, they wield their power over their students, and they accuse students, of, you're racist. Let's say this is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
They say you're racist, but then they start enforcing things like white free days on campus.
Yeah.
What? That's what? Okay.
White Free Days was something that Evergreen University in Washington did, which is days on campus where no white people are allowed.
Of course, in Washington.
Yeah.
That's so. It's just.
In the name of getting rid of
That's
racism.
not racist. That's not racist.
Oh, no.
No.
And so, justification I've heard for that is it's repaying white people for racism.
Yeah.
Which is yet again another incredibly abrasive concept.
Yeah,
Then
that's
saying,
like saying,
Okay, wait, hold on.
Okay, quickly.
So that's like saying that the sins of people's,
The sins of the father.
grandfathers, yeah, are fallen their great grandsons. But then
That's very Old
the
Testament.
other thing is that if you actually look at history and slavery in the United States, the Democrats and liberals were the ones who supported slavery.
Yeah. In the North and in the South.
Yeah, after the Civil War.
And they fought a civil war to protect slavery in the South. And after the Civil War, go on.
Yeah, and after the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln, after being shot and after the war was over, if the conservatives who were in power basically handed over the South, the liberals, and so that's where all the Jim Crow laws come in. But it's just incredibly abrasive because it's like the crimes that they committed and the philosophies that they're supporting, such as the sins of the father falling the son, they're trying to apply that to conservatives, but really it should be applied to themselves.
Well, here's the thing, and very well put. I believe that the truth is the best antiseptic to corruption and lies. I don't believe that many things in an academic sense should be so, bless you, sacred that they are beyond discussion. I think that's a very small set of things. If you allow free exchange of ideas, eventually the truth will win out. I believe that. And to try to throttle speech for the sake of manipulating the outcome of a discussion or manipulating the minds of your students is cheating. I saw a hand over here. Did I? Sir.
So earlier you said a word is necessary.
I think wars are necessary sometimes.
Yeah. Do you think it's necessary now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Look. In 2006, I believe we should have conquered Iraq. Today, I think we need to defend Taiwan. So, to me, yeah, there are times. If Russia moved into Poland, I believe that NATO should fight. That sort of thing. Anyway, thank you. Have a good day. See you tomorrow. Take care.
That's the problem with it.
Haley, what were you going to say? I called